Welcome to the Howie and Beastmode podcast, where we discuss all things business, including growth, strategy, and execution, as well as personal and professional development. Let's join Howie and Beastmode in conversation.
Well, hey, Beastmode, how's it going?
Man, it is so good. It's chilly and wet, but it's such an amazing time. I'm grateful for this time.
Yeah, it's nice to reconnect. We do have in Texas, it's getting chilly. I'm sure it's up north, it's even more so chilly and actually pretty wet today. So it's a change of season that's happening for sure. But yeah, I'm excited about our mini series on stretching for growth. I kind of re-listened to the show last night, and yeah, I really liked it. It was kind of spot on with how to grow, your sales and really develop your prospecting effort in some very creative ways, an area that you're a real expert at. And so I was I benefited from it quite a bit. So yeah. So what do we have on the table for today?
Yeah, so we're going to recap a little bit of our stretching for growth series, the past 2 episodes, and then we're going to dive in and really just kind of let you take hold of today. So we started off stretching for growth with just kind of explain what stretching was. That stretching needs to be intentional. It needs to be something that we're doing specifically geared for a specific task. But it doesn't mean that stretching can't occur from an outside source. We also talked about mindset, that shifting our mindset into why we are stretching and the reason behind it. Again, allows the stretching to be more effective. That's really what episode 1 was. Then we shifted over to episode 2, and we were talking about the candidacy and really engaging that in a new and unique way. So we walked through some social media efforts, and we walked through a couple of things about how we can stretch, how we engage, and really get to the next step, which is where we are today, which is going the next process into sales. And so I know for you, you're very, very, very much into phone. And so that's what we're going to start off with today.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting for sure. And I really encourage you guys to go listen to the last episode. When I listened to it last night, it was such a refreshing podcast. It sounded great, and the content was spot on with kind of what works today. So yeah, we do want to get into the phone. So in the last episode, we talked a lot about, sort of like identifying your customer list, your target account market, basically, people that fit your ideal customer profile. Within that, we talked about establishing what personas, basically what they call it your ICP, your ideal customer profile is not just your account, but it's at a contact level too. So who are the personas? Like, are you selling to CFOs mostly? If you're selling Workday, you probably are, or you might be selling to HR or both. So identifying once you've got your target account list, you identify what types of people that you should be developing a relationship, and then going through that social introduction process that Beastmode gave us, which was just powerful, and it was so humane and so warm and so value added, which is really swimming against the tide with what you're seeing in sales a lot today. Although I will say younger millennials and Gen Zs seem to have something going on in terms of the social side of things, and they seem to have a little bit less of a pressure sales tactic. So that's really, really good. So yeah, everybody has to kind of get on board with that value added approach. So yeah, there we go. This week, we do want to talk about the phone and extended sales development tactics. The main thing to understand is that, first of all, not everybody's going to respond to social to that approach. The second thing that we need to understand is that it's very valid for you to call the customer and engage them directly. They understand they're going to get sales calls. And so you're not going to shock them in their day. You'll be like the third one that they received. If you're calling a VP of information security, believe me, they've probably already had 6 calls that day. So it just depends on the level. But understanding what you're going to say on the phone in a very short amount of time is a really big deal. But first, I want to talk about call avoidance. So there's a thing in the industry called call avoidance. Everybody has it a little bit. even though I'm phone oriented and I actually like it, I have a little bit of it myself. I have a little bit of that. It's a psychological factor that you don't want to pick up the phone and you don't want to get started. What you'll find is if you'll just force yourself to make those first 3 phone calls, you do kind of warm up. And so the subsequent calls are easier. So be aware, just being aware of call avoidance, that it's a thing and that you're not weird and that you're normal and that you can overcome that is a really important thing for me to say first. Second thing is you can practice. I mean, you practice your golf swing, you practice your basketball shot. There's nothing wrong with practicing your voicemail, your introduction when you get someone live, all of those things. I have done that and I have found that to be helpful. Eventually you'll probably memorize it and you'll just be able to tweak it as you go along. But yeah, definitely call avoidance, forget that. Second thing is, getting on the phone and warming up with that process. And then the third comment, and then I'll let Beast Mode make some comments or ask a new question. But in terms of, yeah, just write down what you want to say and kind of practice that. So I have some
Yeah.
more to say, but I'm going to take a break.
Yes. I was going to pause you because there was so much good in there. So first off, you were talking about identifying your customer. Now, I know that I really resonate with that. And so if you guys didn't hear that, you need to rewind and go check that out again. One of the things is that if you can identify this is who I, at the end of the day, who my product sells to, that's a huge benefit because then I can just go to that person. I'm not stuck jumping through hoops. And so again, if you're constantly having these conversations and you're stuck in the middle, then find out, ask who's the decision maker on this. You can remain my point of contact. I would just like to know who's going to be making the ultimate decision. It's a nice way to find out. And so then you can, for next accounts. So if you're able to narrow that down, then now you're not having to jump through hoops with an assistant or with a director level when ultimately VPs are going to be making a decision on your product. Huge. And then I'll tell you, this really spoke to me. These individuals are expecting to get phone calls. I'll tell you, maybe it's almost a decade ago when I first transitioned into more of a salesy phone. And I remember the first day I'm sitting there and I'm going through this and I'm like, man, this does not feel right. This is not my normal routine. And I remember having like the epiphany of these people are expecting my phone call today, not necessarily from me, but they're expecting to get phone calls. And so I shouldn't feel awkward. I should not feel weird. It's there. I'm expecting to get 10 sales calls and I'm just happen to be one of the 10. And so it alleviated some of that awkwardness or potential butterflies just because, hey, I don't know. I may be the first one. I may be the 10th one. Let's find out. So it kind of made it as my thought for the day. And just like Howie said, I still sometimes have that, which is why sometimes at the beginning of the day, I'll try to schedule a call, any call. It doesn't matter, just to get the conversation started for the day. And then, hey, you just jump in for the rest of the day on the phone. Does it resonate to you, Howie?
It sure does. I love that you highlighted that. That's a big deal. And you've actually lived that. And you know what that's all about. So, you
Yeah.
survived those calls. I mean, you were new at it and you don't have to be an expert to make a phone call. I mean, think about just calling someone that you know. So yeah, you made it happen.
And I'll be totally transparent. I remember specifically having a cold call one time and just chatting and then just being like, man, this is awful. Sorry. And the guy that I was talking to was like, oh man, no big deal, whatever. And we just kind of moved along, I finished what I was trying to talk to him about. He pleasantly declined, but what was the worst that could happen? I just told him, hey, sorry, this call sucks.
It's so funny because I like sometimes the humanity that Sarah Brazier from Gong gives on LinkedIn. I like her stuff. And she talked about how she had this terrible phone call the other day. It was just so human and so cool that she would share like that. And she's got quite a little LinkedIn following. So yeah, I think it's endearing if we just admit, you know what, that kind of sucked. Can I start again? Or, and
Yeah.
just make fun of yourself, because now you're not a robot or like somebody trying to sell them. Now it's like you're their younger brother, or you're their, you know what I mean? Or you're somebody,
Yeah.
you're a persona that they can relate to. That's really
Yeah.
cool. You did that. That's really cool.
Well, it was really the only option. I had to acknowledge how bad it was, at least in my mind, that I had to mention it. Uh, so, but it's just one of those things that I think it's helpful.
That's really cool.
But let's keep going. I know you got a
Yeah.
lot to try about.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to kind of sample an example cold call that,
Yeah.
that has worked for me. So, you first of all, it's good to, look at their LinkedIn if you can before the phone call, and have, be a little bit familiar with them. See if you can have a talking point, if they have a post, or if they have if they, you went to the same school, or, they go to a rival school, whatever,
Mm.
and see if there's something that you can kind of resonate with. So a little bit of preparation is really good. But mainly just, dialing the phone. You should always leave a voicemail too. So have that ready to go, have that kind of written down, make sure it's like under
Yes,
30 seconds.
for
Why,
sure.
have that to chance? But yeah, I would just say, hey, Beast Mode, this is Brian Howard calling you from XYZ. Did I catch you at a bad time? And so what
No,
happens is,
sir.
by being really confident right there in that process, and by also asking for permission and kind of like being a little bit self-deprecating, did I catch you at a bad time? Is a really good way to start. I invariably start my calls that way. I saw someone on LinkedIn badmouth that the other day. I couldn't understand
No.
why, because it really works for me, and it's always good to go in your call. In the sales world, there's kind of like a pendulum. There's a psychological pendulum. I learned this in Sandler sales training, and the pendulum is like, on this side you're pushing them and you're going too positive, and on this side is if you go negative. And what happens is they go the opposite psychologically. So if you push them into really positive, like sales pressure, and don't you want this solution, blah, blah, blah. If you push them really, really positive, they only have one direction to go, which is a little bit negative, right? So a little bit defensive and protective. So if you, on your phone calls and in your talk, if you go a little bit negative, then they will tend to be, they'll tend to give more grace, and they'll tend to swing a little bit more to the positive side. It's a really important thing to understand. So anyway, I'm going to go through that again. Hey, Beast Mode, thanks so much for picking up the call. This is actually a cold call. I know that's probably not exciting, but would you mind if I told you in 25 seconds, kind of why I called?
No, go ahead.
And so, typically, so what I do is I work for XYZ, and we cover this area of the market. And, typically there's, this kind of problem that we solve, or that kind of problem, or this kind of problem. Are any of those things that are something that you've experienced before?
Okay, I want to pause.
Yep. Yep.
Can I pause you? Okay,
Sure.
two things, and I want everyone to really, really focus in. Two different tactics he showed you in there, and they're both very, very different. Number one, the first one is he asked me, and he spent some time talking about it by going positive, negative, but he asked me, is now a bad time, right? 99% of people ask you, is now a good time. The problem is that if you ask me if it's a good time, my response is yes or no. But if I respond with yes, I don't tell you how long of time I have. So yeah, it's a good time. You got 30 seconds, but I didn't tell you that. I just said yes, right? And then you start talking. Well, now it's transitioned into a bad time for me, and I'm frustrated, right? But if I start off the phone call and I say, hey, hey, Howie, it's Jordan Allsup with JL. Just wanted to know if now's a bad time. I give you the power to say no, it's not a good time, Jordan. Well, I'm so sorry to hear that, Howie. When's a better time to call you back? And bam, now I've given him the ability to say no, which we've talked about, power of no. Go back and listen to it. And then we've also given him the ability to schedule. I've given him the power. You know what? Next Tuesday at 10:30 is best for me. I put in all the ball in his court. And guess what? Now I've got a scheduled phone call for next Tuesday at 10:30. Bam. It's so important. Now the second one, totally different perspective, totally different avenue you went down. But you know what? You told me, hey guys, hey Jordan, this is a cold call. I'm letting you know exactly what this is. I didn't schedule this on your time. Would it be okay? Again, you're placing all the ball in my court. I could say, you know, Howie, right now I don't have time for a cold call. I'd love to hear about that. But again, you know, give me 2 weeks. No problem. Hey, thank you for taking a few moments. I look forward to catching back with you in 2 weeks. Both things are very powerful, very different. And quite frankly, you should interchange those all day long.
It's funny because I flipped to that one without thinking about it. And so I guess I'm naturally interchanging them. One thing to do is, so yeah, keep it short, obviously. And then also, if they give you an objection, I would just ask them about that. You know, so if they say, "Oh, we already have a solution that does that." Oh, really? What are you guys using? You know, and just kind of have some follow up to that, and just say, "You know what? That's a pretty good solution. I assume you're probably not going to move from that. Totally okay. Is there any other things in this context that you want to explore? Any other areas that that maybe we can help you out, or should we, you know, follow up? You know, maybe on your renewal time frame, you know, when you're up for renewal. When are you up for renewal?
Yeah.
Next year? Okay, well, tell you what, I'm going to call you. If I were to call you 90 days before that renewal and just see if you're happy or see if we can maybe do something a little bit differently for you, maybe save money or whatever, would that be okay if I called you that time?
See,
Okay.
and to some people that may seem poking, prodding, stretching. Oh, I don't want to do that. But you got to understand, if you don't, the hardest part is to get that person on the phone. You got them on the phone now.
Yeah.
You got them partially engaged. Hey, I might as well ask you whatever I can while I got you here. And you know what? If I don't, somebody else will. So
good.
That's really where it's at.
And then I think two more things that when you have them on the phone, if they're not interested, is say, well, do you mind if I, you know, maybe once a month or every other month, do you mind if I invite you to a webinar or share related content around this with you? And then you just kind of get permission to stay in touch. Usually they'll say yes. Sometimes they'll say no, and things of that nature. But yeah, you know, you put them on the calendar. It'd be better to, you know, if you follow up 90 days before the renewal, that's good. It'd be better to also, you know, follow up with them in between now and then, basically. That would be better. So yeah, you know, be ready to sort of drill down a little bit. You only have that chance. Now, if they do say, like Beastmode said, hey, in a couple weeks, you know, would be better, you got to have your calendar ready. So I would suggest having your notes in front of you and having your calendar pulled up. And then you can just say, hey, Jill, do you mind if we just look at the calendar right now? And so instead of 2 weeks, you know, I kind of call you and I kind of shock you again. We could just have 15 minutes. I doubt, you know, in 15 minutes, we should be able to qualify me sort of like in or out. So yeah, if we can grab 15 minutes, you know, you picked up the phone this time. Is this literally kind of like a good time for you sometimes when you can have little 15-minute calls? And I have heard a study from Yesware, this is a couple years old, said that offering a small amount of time like that can be helpful. So maybe proactively don't go and block an hour. Like I actually have an interview in 25 minutes for somebody and they booked a whole hour. I know for a fact they're going to use 25 minutes probably, and yet they booked a whole hour. So why do that? And by the way, I don't mind. I'm thankful for the interview. It's great. But yeah, why not go ahead and offer a shorter meeting? Because if they have time and they love it, then they'll go more. But yeah, anyway, that's a couple more thoughts. You want to bounce back?
Yeah. First off, do not offer somebody an hour of, don't try to take an hour of their time. I don't care if I like the product. If you call me trying to take an hour of my time, my answer will be no. Unless Howie and I are doing a podcast. That time is valuable and
we can do an hour, yeah.
But yeah, if you're calling to sell me something, even something I want, don't try to take an hour of my time. But so yeah, the smaller blocks of time are great. I honestly, and this is just my own personal perspective, is use a unique number. I think the 515s get worn out and sometimes can promote a no or can promote you're just like everybody else. And so sometimes I'll just use weird time frames, just to think differently, to be outside the box. So, if we schedule a 9-minute phone call, and then it's like 9 minutes, and yeah, well, that's all I need, 9 minutes, and okay, well, maybe this guy does know, he knows exactly how much time he needs, and so it's just furthers that conversation. Hey, that's the 9-minute phone call guy, or whatever number you choose. That's just, again, my perspective, and clearly it shows with how I try to interact with people on social media and things like that. So
That's
just
good.
something to stretch you with.
Mm-hmm.
So, because this whole thing's about stretching. So stretching new ideas, stretching things that you wouldn't normally do or don't want to do, or maybe are difficult for you. But again, we're doing it for a purpose, specifically and intentionally. So we're trying something new differently.
I love it. I think it's a really good idea. I like all of the things that you're saying. And, I think one of the things that is good is if you can record some people have the ability to record phone calls. If you use HubSpot, you have to pay for it, but they do record their phone calls. There's other tools as well. It is a good idea. But you know what? Even if you don't have a tool like that, what you could do is have your iPhone or your Android phone sitting there on record mode, and you can hear yourself and you can see.
Yeah.
It might be a good way. I've never done that. I just thought of it. But because of recording technology and things that are available, it's making me start to think about sort of like modernizing and doing some more of those things. But yeah, again, it's kind of like looking at your golf swing. People do record their golf swing. So it's so funny, Beastmode, because sales is the only profession that people feel like they can just wing it, and there's no training, and it's like, oh, they just have it. And I would just not agree with that.
Yeah.
I think training yourself is a really good idea. I have a Sandler right now. I'm under this pressure to find a job, so I haven't done a lot of really sort of like developmental. I've done a little bit. I've done like my Bible in the morning and some developmental in that way. But I have a Sandler book over here I really want to read, and I just need to take some time to do that because we're talking about things that are right in that book. It's an old sales training book from some Sandler training that I went through. But yeah, I really encourage you guys to look at that. By the way, if you're interested in Sandler, I keep talking about that. There is a good book that you can get called "You Can't Teach a Kid to Ride a Bike at a Seminar," and it kind of goes into some of the early days of Sandler and how it was started. But Sandler is focused very much on pain and gain, and if you kind of build your whole sales cycle based on identifying the customer's pains and their gains. And that's why I said a few minutes ago, when you're actually, we'll get to voicemails in just a second. It's a good thing that I remember that. But yeah, when you're talking to the customer, though, it's really good. It helps me contextualize you. If when Beastmode is calling from JL and he says, "Hey, Brian, I noticed you guys are doing some interesting things over at Transformation Strategies. Hey, I was curious. We see a lot of people who are having problems keeping up with their social media and getting the word out about them to develop leads. Are you guys having that problem?" And then shut up, right? And that sounds a little bit rude right now, but I always tell my teams that because it's an abrupt statement. So shut up and let Brian Howard from Transformation Strategies answer. In my case, we're so new, I actually would say that I'm having that problem, but I'm even pre that problem, even, to be honest. But yeah, a lot of plumbers and painters. Listen, they could develop leads just by having the word out more on social, just clicking and filling that form out and whatever it is. Or just responding with an email I need painting for my kitchen. My wife's killing me, blah, 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 blah. And because you're on social, that's out there. So that is a real pain that I kind of clicked into and I sort of drilled down on that Beastmode happens to solve. But literally, if you can describe an industry situation that you fix, or one or two, or maybe three at the most, then they'll have the context for who you are and what you do, and they'll be able to slot you. What we really have to do is be careful with the topic of sales clarity, and people need to be able to slot you into a problem zone, and they either have that problem zone or they don't. I will say though, Beastmode, we did an email campaign when I was at my last company around storage hardware systems. and it was around like monitoring storage. And we had, one customer say, "Oh, I don't have IBM Spectrum Control anymore, but I would like a discovery call on this because we do need more storage monitoring in our environment." And it was like so funny that just because I slotted myself into the category, even though my data was wrong from the database that I was using, they don't have IBM Spectrum Control anymore. They have something else that's also not working. And so they at least do the categories. So you want to make sure on your cold calls and on your voicemails to talk about the problem that you solve. And what's great about this is, and this will probably really resonate with you, Beast Mode, but if you can say that in a way, kind of like the story I described with painting, if you can say it in a little mini story, you have to keep them really short, but a scenario or a story, and then you're back to what you talked about, which is value. And so now it's not just a cold call, but now you're a little teeny bit of education as you kind of communicate that industry pain.
Yeah. Can I touch on something real quick? It came to my mind as you were talking. And I don't know who needs to hear this, but whenever you call somebody, do not say, "Hi, so I'm calling Howie." Don't say, "Hi, may I speak with Howie?" You need to tell them exactly who you are and why you're calling.
Yes.
Okay, because I get it all the time where somebody will call me, they're trying to do sales, and they say, "Hi, may I speak with Jordan Allsup?" And now I'm exactly what Howie said. Now I'm defensive. Who are you? Why are you calling? And it's hard to get back on the other side.
Yeah.
So tell them who you are. Okay.
That's so good because I have, somebody calling me on my cell phone. Sometimes I'll have 2, 3, 4 calls a day. Sometimes I have 0 calls, but I get those, those telemarketer kind of situations. And that's what they say is, "Can I speak with Mr. Howard, or can I speak with Brian Howard?" And I'm like, that's so abrasive. Like, you don't have permission. Instead, why don't you lead with who you are? Lead with who you are. Why don't you give to take?
Yes.
Who are you?
Yeah.
So Beast Mode, that was a great reminder.
Yeah. We skipped over that, but as you were talking,
So good.
it was I had to mention it because it's a big pet peeve. And so if you're doing it, stretch yourself to tell them exactly. Even if you don't think you're somebody and you're calling somebody, that's okay. Tell them exactly who you are. They're going to respect that.
It's such an appropriate name, stretching for growth. And the last couple of weeks have been focused on the sales side of it. We probably have, it feels like we've got 2 or 3 more. I don't know how many more, but we'll see what happens. We'll see how it evolves. But you got to get on the phone. You got to stretch yourself. And when you leave voicemails, we didn't talk about that. I'll just give you a quick thumbnail of it because we're pretty far over. But I would just say that make sure you plan your voicemail script, keep it under 30 seconds, or at least right around there, and cover those pains again. Introduce yourself and give a clear call to action. Also, and a call to action just means, what do you want? What do you want? Like, you're gonna, all that effort, you didn't say what you want. Like, what you want is, you want that 10-minute or 9-minute chat about how issues we solve, and see if there's a fit with what you're doing and all that. Also, it'd be really stupid. No one's going to call you back. Like, seriously, like, I've had very few actual callbacks. So what you have to do is you have to say, "I'm going to also email you. So if you prefer to respond to that, that'd be great." And then your email covers a little bit more content, but not much. Hopefully a link to your website or whatever. And make sure there's always a 1-2 punch. You don't just leave a voicemail. You're also sending an email.
Yeah. I normally do it the other way around. I normally send the email first, right before I call. That way, if they are abrasive, I could say, "I'm following up on the email I sent you." Even though if I just sent it 10 seconds before I called you, I'm still following up on the email I sent you. And it allows that kind of breakthrough. So.
All right. That's good. Good move. Good psychology. Well, I'm excited about our next episode, where we'll dig into this a little bit more. And kind of see where we go with it. I think there's a whole lane we could explore along these lines to help folks out. And definitely, if you guys have questions, feel free to post those questions, especially on YouTube. not all the content, not all the podcast platforms have a great way of sharing, those kinds of questions. So YouTube will definitely get back to you.
Yeah, we read all of them.
Yeah, so feel free to ping us that way.
Yeah, and I know, Howie, we didn't get into everything that you wanted to cover today, so I'm sure we're going to transition that to next time. But again, please follow us and check this out, specifically on YouTube. But again, you can catch it anywhere podcasts are shared. And we look forward to continuing this conversation on stretching for growth next week. See ya.